So yeah, we're managing a team near the North Pole. Or rather, he is.
Huh?
Meet Ole Fury Solksjær, a former semi-professional footballer who says he is a distant cousin of the Manchester United legend himself, Ole Gunnar Solskjær. But before we get to him, let's talk about the club in question near the North Pole. Alta IF is a semi-professional club founded in 1927, which is located in the city of Alta, 400 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. The club's recent years have seen it alternate between the second and third tier of Norwegian football, and thus, Ole Fury will have his work cut out for him, as the team is predicted to finish in third place of the Post-Nordligaen. The third-tier structure in Norwegian football consists of 28 teams, divided into two groups of 14 teams. Alta happens to be in Group 2, and they'll play each of the 13 teams in their group twice in a round-robin format where the winner will be automatically promoted to the Obos-ligaen, and second place gets to go through a playoff against a relegation side from the second tier. Those matches happen from April to November, which is an unusual format, but when you consider the fact that winters in Norway are brutal, it makes more sense to start the season from early spring until late autumn. Over the course of the league, there's also the NM-SAS Bradens Cup, or plainly the Norwegian Football Cup. The winners of the Norwegian Cup receive the King's Trophy, they qualify for the Europa League's third qualifying round, and they get a place in the Mesterfinalen, the Norwegian Supercut match. And given that Ole Gunnar Solskjær has won the Norwegian Cup in 2013 with Molde, Ole Fury Solksjær is also going to be looking to do the very same thing in the near future. But the challenge for Ole Fury will be massive, as Alta IF are a semi-professional team, and while the bank account is currently healthy, the facilities aren't state-of-art.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
Which means the team is going to need to be built through free agents and whatever sensible transfers they can make. The current roster is a combination of both younger players as well as some wily veterans. In order to make this a successful season, they'll be counting on the experience of the likes of Captain Mats Friedrich Hansen, Vice Captain Christian Reginiussen, alongside the prowess of diverse defender Niklas Antonsson, midfielder Mathias Dahl Abelson, and their young striker duo of Peder Brekken and Jürgen Hamari. Additionally, Ole Fury doesn't hesitate to make some more signings to bolster the roster during the preseason in center-back Lukman Zakari and goalkeeper Theodor Nielsen. They start the regular season off in the Norwegian Cup against 4th-tier Sjarve IK, playing host to a team whose city is more likely better known for the whale watching than the football they play. Probably with good reason, as Alta manages to defeat them 4-2 to advance to the second round. The initial win in the cup seems to have Alta inspired as they take the Post-Nordligaen by storm with wins over Junkeren to start the league, a win over SK Brand 2, and a draw against Ullern to be at the top of the table to wrap up April. So of course, Ole Fury loses his co-captain, but to his credit, he does not let that deter him. With a cautious 5-3-2 tactic that emphasizes counterattacks involving the wingbacks and the young striker duo of Brekke and Hamari up front, Alta basically are putting the entirety of Norway's 3rd division on ice.
Alright everyone, chill.
Bad puns aside, they go for the early stretch of the season undefeated against the likes of Åkisa, Bærum, Strudals Blink, Strømmen, Levanger FK. Okay, so maybe they lose their starting fullback for nearly 2 months at the start of June, but it doesn't change what I just mentioned before this. It doesn't matter if it's Sten Godset EF2, Komsdalen Football, Kvikhalven, Sotra, or Junkeren again in their path. Alta and Ole Fury managed to put together a total of 13 games unbeaten in the league before the summer transfer window opens. And they're somehow still in second place.
Bruh.
But we'll get back to the league in a second because it turns out Alta's run in the Norwegian Cup is turning out to be something special. After dispatching of Sjarve IK, They met EL Brod and Vindbjart FK in the second and third rounds of the cup respectively. Both were 4th tier teams, but they gave Alta a run for their money, as Alta IF escaped by the skin of their teeth with 1-0 results in both of those fixtures. But then, the draws finally showed no mercy, as Alta would get Kongsvinger EL in the 4th round of the cup, who was a mid-table team in the 2nd tier of Norwegian football. And yet, somehow, Alta overcame a 1-0 deficit to win 2-1, even amidst getting outshot and outpossessed. This would lead Alta to match their highest finish ever in the Norwegian Cup, with their first quarterfinal appearance since 2011. But much like in 2011, they would also face a team from the 1st tier of Norwegian football. This time around, it would be Viking FK, a team that has won the Norwegian Cup 6 times. The quarterfinal saw Alta's counterattack style draw first blood early on, before Viking responded in equally brutal fashion with 2 goals in 2 minutes. All 3 of these goals happened within the first 20 minutes of the game. But Viking FK wasn't finished by any stretch, as they added a 3rd goal just before halftime to seal the deal.
I don't think so.
Alta somehow managed to score 2 goals in a 3-minute span in the near end of the second half and forced this game all the way to penalty kicks. And when you go to penalty kicks, just about anything can happen.
What a save!
Like I said, just about anything can happen, including going up against Molde FK in the team's first ever venture into the Norwegian Cup semifinals. You know, one of only 2 Norwegian clubs to have participated in the UEFA Champions League, also the team where Ole Fury Solksjær played and managed for. In fact, that's the team in which Ole Fury Solksjær had come back to manage once again this season. For what it's worth, I did not have an expected family reunion in my bingo card for this year. But we'll get back to that in a second, because at present time, June and July have gone by, Alta still maintaining its undefeated streak in the league, while chasing first place Stjørdals-Blink as the summer transfer window opened in August. As the transfer window opened, Alta had opted to let Christian Skorpen go to Skarp Tromsø, and then brought in some youth in midfielder Adrian Sedbuck and defender Isaac Vodebo. Their debuts against Uvik Lyn helped seal a win that finally got Alta in first place in the Post-Nord Ligaen, and along with a dominant 4-0 win over Ullern, that made it 15 unbeaten for Alta and kept them 4 points ahead in the standings. The streak has had him leading the league in goals for with 28 and only allowing 8 goals against throughout it, so of course Ole Fury finds a way to lay a goose egg and loses to SK Brand's reserve team 3-0. Snapping said winning streak not only in the league but across all competitions as a whole. Thankfully for them, Alta bounces back almost immediately against Åkjøsa and proceeds to go on another unbeaten streak through September by defeating Bærum, getting a key 2-0 win against Stjørdals-Blink to further separate first and second place, managing to rescue a draw late against Stermen, and then securing a playoff place after a win against Levanger FK. To end the month, it was time for the Norwegian Cup semifinal, as Alta made the long, arduous trip to Molde with 30 strong alongside the players and staff into hostile territory against one of Norway's best. The 2 managers exchanged pleasantries in their press conferences, although Ole Fury wanted this win to prove that he was every bit as good as his distant cousin. Ole Gunnar's men would give Alta a taste of reality by scoring a pair of goals to end the half 2-0 in their favor. Even Jørgen Hamari's goal in the 63rd minute would not be able to spark a comeback, as Molde FK's 3rd goal in the 89th minute killed off any last-minute heroics. With their magical run in the Norwegian Cup coming to an end, and his cousin Ole Gunnar's inspiring words in the aftermath, plus a cool extra 150,000 in winnings from making it to the Cup semis, Alta returns back beyond the Arctic Circle to focus on the finishing touches to their Post-Nord Ligaen campaign. After beating Tromsdalen to start October in 4 games left, they only need to win 1 more of those games to win the title itself. A 1-1 draw against Skemgodset EF2 and a 1-0 loss to Sotka isn't quite exactly what they were looking for, but given that both of those were away fixtures, maybe Ole Fury was just playing 4D chess and waiting until getting quick Valden at home, because they basically crushed them 4-1 and get to celebrate a title, a promotion, and everything in between with all the confetti and festivities that you can ask for. It's an impressive outing for Ole Fury Solskjær's rookie year as a manager, with both a championship win in the third tier and the breathtaking run in the Norwegian Cup. But expectations are only going to get higher, as they'll be headed up to the second tier in the Obos-ligaen, and at the same time, well, they're gonna have to do it as a semi-professional club due to the fact that the club still doesn't have enough money to afford making the shift to full pro status just yet. But hey, at least their upcoming youth intake looks like it's gonna be their best ever. Watch it be a bunch of scrubs and one half-decent 15-year-old. Oh, who am I kidding? They're all going to be scrubs. So after his first year with Alta IF, Ole Fury Solksjær won the Post-Nordligaen to get the team promoted to the second tier of Norwegian football, only to see all of the media pundits predicting Alta to be relegated. So Ole Fury does not hesitate to get quite active in the transfer market before the start of Alta's upcoming season. To add more variety to the wings and Alta's attack, free transfers Adrian Peterson and Elias Skogvold are brought into the fold. For the defense, Sebastian Warwick and Oscar Opsahl come through for the long and short term respectively. For the midfield, Aleksev Sevelievs is brought in on a free transfer along with goalkeeper prospect Jonas Abrahamsen. But Alta's three big signings to bolster the starting lineup are Latvian goalie Vladislav Skurakins, striker Marius Buskard Larsen is brought in on a transfer from Bromsdalen, and then arguably the crowning jewel of Alta's transfer window as they get midfielder Albert Lutan to come in on a free transfer. Lutan's experience at a high level with his time in Bordeaux should go a long way towards aiding Alta in avoiding relegation, and if Ole Fury has it his way, going beyond everyone's expectations. In order to compete at this level, Ole Fury also begins to add further tactics into his pocket for certain situations. Between his trusty 5-3-2 from last season, he decides to properly pay homage to his distant cousin by adopting Ole Gunnar's 4-2-3-1 style into his own. In the case of emergencies, he also now has a 4-3-3 tactic swiped straight from a Portuguese coach he's been watching coach a Brazilian team to glory in recent years. I wonder who that could possibly be. So, we've gone over the signings, we've gone over the tactics, but it feels like I'm missing something before the start of the season.
You've got mail.
Oh right, the report on Alta's new intake of youth players. Let's see how disappoint... Wait, so you're telling me that they're not scrubs? And that Ole Fury has a gem that might be the greatest Norwegian player since, you know, him? Alright, now that we got that out of the way and I have egg on my face, the start of the new season is here for Alta in the Obos-ligaen. 16 teams in total, round-robin format. First and second place get automatic promotion to the Eliteserien, while 3rd through 6th go into a playoff for the 3rd promotion spot. Last 2 places get relegated, 14th gets to play in a playoff game against the 3rd tier team, and while Alta's optimistic predictions are to avoid relegation even if they have to go through this type of playoff game, Ole Fury is still quite, well,
absolutely livid
about being underestimated like that. Reality does set in when their opening match in the Obos-ligaen against Bryn FK becomes a battle of attrition, but after new signing Marius Buskard Larsen finds the winning goal in the 90th minute, that's the shot of confidence that Alta and Ole Fury need as the boys then go on undefeated in their next 6 games between both the league and the first 2 rounds of the Norwegian Cup, in which Alta dispatched a fellow Obos-ligaen team Åsane Football in the first round and 4th Division Kukevdalen in the second round. But unlike last season, the luck of the draw would put them against an Eliteserien team in the 3rd round, this time in Lillestrøm. Much like last year's quarterfinal thriller against Viking FK, goals are being scored on both sides, as it looks like it will be another war of attrition as the teams are headed into extra time, tied 2-2.
Get up! Get him off the field!
That's a red card.
So this red card somehow does not immediately come back to haunt Alta, as they hold on for dear life as Lillestrøm is on the offensive but cannot quite find a goal. And yet again, a matchup in the Norwegian Cup against an Eliteserien team goes to penalty kicks, where anything can happen.
What a save!
Like I said, anything can happen. Okay, so Ole Fury basically got a taste of what it felt like to be on the losing end of penalties this season, and Alta IF's Norwegian Cup campaign comes to an abrupt end in the third round. But that's the magic of cup competitions.
You win some, you lose some. We're going to be back again next week.
After the crushing loss, Ole Fury's only reprieve was the fact that he could laser focus on the Obos-ligaen. With a determination to exceed expectations and a plan where he constantly rotates his tactics to keep opponents at bay, they go unbeaten in their next 5 games while extending their league unbeaten streak to 9 games in total. Goal contributions are coming from all players within the team, but it is Marius Buskard Larsen who is making himself known during this stretch with 5 goals in 12 games. But after beating Jerv 4-0, Viking FK was next on the list, and remembering the humiliation they suffered last season in the Cup quarterfinals along with their own frustrations at being relegated, well, they beat the absolute snot out of Alta and broke their 9-game unbeaten streak in the Obos-ligaen with a 3-0 win. It was a demoralizing loss to start June, but it would serve as a humble reminder to not take the second tier of Norwegian football lightly, as Alta scratched and clawed the wins against Gorud IL and Sandnes Ulf before losing to Mjøndalen. As Alta headed into July, their league form did have them neck and neck with IK Start for the top of the league, and after getting back to winning ways against Raufoss Football, their matchup in mid-July would be the key to determine which team was the top dog in the Obos-ligaen. So of course it ended with a 0-0 draw. Also, their best midfielder getting injured for the next 3 weeks does not help, as the follow-up matches during that stretch against Bryggen and Ålesund see a pair of 0-0 draws where keeper Vladislav Skorokins is having to save their bacon. But to Alta's credit, that means they're still getting points, and a brace from Marius Larsen in the game against KUFM Oslo does bring both Alta and IK Start at 36 points each with an eerily identical stat line. I've got to think those statistics scared the team straight because they go unbeaten for the rest of August against HamKam and Kongsvinger, carrying that streak into September with a 3-2 win against Moss FK and a 3-0 win over Ranheim to give them a 4-point cushion in the standings with only 8 games to go. But Alta's September run comes crashing down as Ultimate Football finally paid them back for the Norwegian Cup elimination earlier in the year. A costly red card in the 30th minute sees Jerv being able to eventually beat Alta 1-0, and a pair of draws follow suit against Viking FK and Guru EL as the team goes winless for 4 straight games. Oh yeah, also, the injuries to depth players leading up to the final stretch of the season don't help matters either. In the meantime, IK Start's form is impeccable and they now lead the Obos-ligaen by 4 points, and with 4 games left to go in the season, Ole Fury is still aiming for the top after the back and forth jousting that Alta and IK Start have done through a majority of the season. The last game of the season puts the 2 clubs against each other, and under the right circumstances, that could make the last game of their seasons a match for the league title itself. But at the same time, the focus was on taking it a single game at a time for Alta. To start, it takes a win in dramatic fashion with yet another red card. Okay, seriously, what is it with Ole Fury's men just trying to take people out at the ankles this year?
Minute 46.
No way.
Red card.
No way.
Regardless, somehow Alta scores 3 goals, and all of them are from penalty kicks in order for them to snap out of their winless streak against Sandnes Ulf. Then, the return match against Mjøndalen sees the team yet again end up with a red card, but somehow survive to win it 2-1. With their title hopes still alive in the second to last game of the season, Raufoss Football was up next, and a win here would at least guarantee promotion for Alta. After a goal from each side in the first 10 minutes, Raufoss took the lead in the 51st minute, before Elias Skogvold found the tying goal in the 71st minute. For Alta, this looked like another draw on hand, but Mattias Dahl Eberson's shot on goal ended up being deflected by the Raufoss defender that led to an own goal and Alta winning it on the road, guaranteeing their promotion to the Eliteserien. Unfortunately, EK Start's form remained phenomenal through this 3-game stretch, and they secured the title outright with their win over Kongsvinger. But it did not stop Ole Fury and Alta from giving their home crowd the chance to see their team beat the champions to wrap up the season on a positive note. 2 seasons, 2 promotions, and most importantly, being the man who has taken Alta IF to the top level of Norwegian football for the first time in their 90-plus year history. That's something that Ole Fury Solksjær can put on his resume with pride. Due to their promotion to the Eliteserien, the board of directors promptly agrees to have Alta make the move to turn into a professional club as of January 2025, just in time for the new season to start. Overall, there's a lot to look forward to here. The team is looking solid for the future, and another youth intake preview shows there may be another solid class of youth prospects on the way. Things are looking up for the small club closest to the North Pole. Okay, it makes sense that the Eliteserien has minimum requirements for their grounds, and that our current ground isn't one that quite fits the criteria. So where exactly is this Alfheim Stadion anyway? Oh yeah, Tromsø! I know the place. Chelsea got their butts kicked there 3-2 in the snow game back in the 90s. But how long is the trip to get there? 5.5 hours by car? On second thought, Ole Fury might want to ask for a new stadium any day now. In his second season with Alta IF, Ole Fury Solksjær got the boys near the North Pole promoted to the Eliteserien, the top tier of Norwegian football, only to find out that the team will be playing all of its home games going forward in Tromsø, a city 5.5 hours southwest of Alta due to stadium requirements.
Sorry, what?
Oh, and additionally, the board of directors also refused Ole Fury's request to start building a new ground in Alta due to a lack of fans and a fear that the new stadium would not be filled out.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
It is then that Ole Fury Solskjær's next mission as Alta's manager becomes clear: to increase the team's stature and popularity in order to get a new ground built. To do so, the immediate goal is to remain in the Eliteserien, even as everyone and their mother predict your team to get relegated.
Someone said it, not me, innit?
In order to compete at the highest level, Ole Fury would need to hit the ground running in the transfer window. First, players such as Abel Ness and Theodor Nielsen would be sold due to their inability to play at this level, along with Jürgen Hamadi and Oscar Opso going on loan for further experience. To strengthen the roster for the Eliteserien, Ole Fury orchestrated the loan of RB Salzburg prospect Pierre Weber, along with grabbing Icelandic free agent striker Stefan Ingi Sigurðarson and Nigerian free agent Nathaniel Nwosu. From there, he snagged Martin Sjustad from Sogndal due to his ability to play on both wings, paid for right wing Rogério Fernandes, then splashed big cash from a club standpoint to get in quality starters in Dutch Milan Hockey, Faroe Islander Noah Nene, and American Kobe Hernandez Foster. But the big coup for Ole Fury was an unexpected one, as he managed to sign none other than Odin Thiago Holm on loan from Inter Milan, where the Norwegian had been for the last 2 seasons, but who had seldom played for I Nerazzurri. But for those who might wonder how exactly Ole Fury had managed to afford all of these players and purchases, he may have also sold Peter Brekke to Rosenborg for 750k right at the start of January.
You what?
I know, I have my questions too, but at the same time, with Buskar Larsson's emergence last season and Sigurðarson being brought in, I can see why the move was made. I just hope it works out for him, because otherwise...
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
The first game in the Eliteserien is against Stabæk, who have been a consistent presence at the top level of Norwegian football. Hopes are bright for Alta as they get to open the season at their new rented home at Alfheim Stadion, and everything looks like it's gonna be alright. They lose one of their star forwards and their first ever game in the Eliteserien. Ominous sign, but nothing you can do but to keep moving forward. Getting Molde FK immediately after that does not help matters because Ole Gunnar's boys are in top form and proceed to give Alta yet another 3-1 beating like they did in the Norwegian Cup 2 years ago. Speaking of the cup though, Alta's first opponent in it is 4th division club Brorvik IL, and that game proves to be the best confidence booster that they could ask for as they beat Brorvik in convincing fashion as the two main loanees in Odin and Weber scored their first goals for the club. It seems the Norwegian Cup has a way of vitalizing Ole Fury because they proceed to use it to pull their yearly unbeaten run of the season through the second and third rounds of the Norwegian Cup against 4th division Nibersgund IL and recently relegated from Eliteserien Bodø Glimt in convincing fashion. But the impressive part of this run are their results in the league itself, as they beat EK Start, managed to draw against Sogndal and Sarpsborg 08, and then have a 4-game run with 2 wins and 2 draws with 4 clean sheets in a row via Nathaniel Nuosu's efforts on net against Sandefjord, Haugesund, Vålerenga, and Lillestrøm. Before that run is finally cut at its knees by the 12-time Norwegian Cup champions in Odds BK. But look, at least Buskard Larsen returned from his damaged kneecap.
And it's gone.
Honestly, both starting strikers being injured just makes this bounce back win against Rosenborg all that much more impressive. Especially when you look at that stat line.
Bruh.
The lack of strikers would prove to be a challenging affair in the 4th round of the Norwegian Cup against Sogndal. An early goal by Odin Thiago Holm got Alta ahead, but Sogndal evened the score at the start of the second half via a corner kick. For the 3rd year in a row, Alta IF dragged itself kicking and screaming the penalty kicks against an Eliteserien team. But the thing is, they're also now an Eliteserien team. And you know the rules by now when it comes to penalty kicks. So Alta manages to survive and makes it to the quarterfinals of the Norwegian Cup to go up against Bryggen FK of the Obos-ligaen. But there'd be no rest for the wicked, as the quarterfinals of the Norwegian Cup against Bryggen happened 5 days after their encounter with Sogndal, and it's yet another encounter that ends 1-1 and goes to the wire, as Alta has to rescue a late draw and drag this thing all the way to penalties again.
You're joking. Not another one?
Yeah, but this time, Nathaniel Nuosu decides he wants to go home early and saves the very first penalty attempt from Bryn. That sets up the tone for the rest of the whole affair, as Alta makes all 4 of their attempts and wrap this up with a 4-2 victory, punching Alta's ticket into the semifinals of the Norwegian Cup for the 2nd time ever. However, the cup highs get smacked right down by their eventual semi-final cup opponent in SK Brann, who beats Alta 4-1 in decisive fashion in the league. The follow-up game against Tromsø ends up in a draw, but Alta do end up breaking their record attendance for a home game attended, even if a majority of those fans at that game are Tromsø fans. It is their stadium after all. Alta is showing signs that they can at least maintain themselves in the mid-table with a win over Skum's Godset, and then wrap up the first half of the season by defeating Kristiansund.
Unit lost.
For sake!
Alta's second go-around in the Eliteserien starts off in ugly fashion, as Stabæk once again beats them 1-0 in a game that could have been much uglier if not for Nathaniel Nuosu's efforts.
God damn it!
While Alta does manage to beat out EK Start 1-0 once more, the rest of August is a crash and burn affair as Molde FK beats them 3-1 yet again. They draw against Sogndal, and then lose in agonizing fashion in the last few minutes against Sarpsborg 08. It's a month to forget that has them only 4 points away from being in the relegation zone that they're fighting so ardently to stay away from. While that stretch of matches was rough, there were some bright moments, such as Wang Weipeng, the greatest prospect this team might ever produce, making his debut into the starting lineup in July. But during the late summer to early fall stretch, elections for the chairperson position were also held within Alta. Chairperson Tommy Fremstad was re-elected by a comfortable margin, and then proceeded to tell Ole Fury Solksjær that there were no plans to provide the club with any additional investment as of this time.
We rich?
We're not rich! We're broke!
Luckily for Ole Fury, Sigurdarsson and Buskar Larsen made their gradual returns to the lineup in September, and the team managed to bounce back against Sandefjord and Haugesund in order to gain some sort of positive momentum heading into their Norwegian Cup semi-final matchup against Brga.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news!
Thankfully for Alta, those two injuries didn't get in the way of them being able to shut out SK Brga with a 2-0 win, making it to the Norwegian Cup final for the first time in team history against Ole Gunnar Solskjær's Molde FK, who have won the Norwegian Cup 3 years in a row. The historical achievement and the pressure that comes with it did seem to take its toll on the team, as Lillestrøm absolutely destroyed them 4-1 2 days after the SK Brga semi-final.
Several days later.
You're taking a piss now!
And well, the rest of October is the equivalent of being in a horror movie, as Alta loses to Vålerenga, are lucky to rescue a draw against Odds BK, try to mount a comeback against Rosenborg to no avail, and then see Marius Buskar Larsen get injured again. Draws against SK Brga and Tromsø follow suit, but thankfully, the points out of their last 3 draws, along with beating a relegation-bound team in Sandefjord and an unlikely win against Strømsgodset, helped Ole Fury accomplish the mission of avoiding relegation in the Eliteserien.
Success!
Not even a loss against Kristiansund at the last day of the league is enough to keep them down, as Ole Fury rotated the lineups fully for that game in order to prepare for what could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A chance at the Norwegian Cup itself against his cousin Ole Gunnar. The odds were definitely not on Alta's side, as Molde FK has the pedigree and are coming in with the intent of defending what they deem to be their cup. Ullevål Stadium in Oslo would play host to the grand final on a snowy night, and while the team expectations for Alta were to simply do all that they could without any expectations of victory, something about the snowy ground and freezing cold conditions made Ole Fury feel like anything could happen. Once the game began, chances surfaced from both sides in the first half, but Alta was dealt a crucial blow at the starting minutes of the second half, as Odin Thiago Holm went down with a pulled back muscle.
Unit lost.
While both sides were struggling with shots on target, Molde's shot attempts at goal increased with each minute, and in the 91st minute, a cross from Namu into the box found Veton Berisha for the back-breaking goal. But that goal got called offside by the assistant referee, as Berisha was just a step or two far ahead. Alta survived the onslaught from Molde to take this game into extra time. But the story is very similar to the second half, where Alta are having to fight for their lives and fend off every possible attempt that Molde FK makes to hit the net, and they come close in quite a few corner kicks. But in the second half of extra time, Ole Fury makes some more changes to the lineup, and Marius Buskar Larsen, who'd finally been recovered enough from his hamstring injury, comes into the game along with Mats Fride Hensen and Elias Skogvold, as the team is mentally preparing themselves to survive and take their chances on penalty kicks for the 3rd time in this tournament. The 119th minute comes and Molde has a free kick near the right corner as they attempt a set piece in the box to finalize this game, but in their attempts to find a shot on net, Pierre Weber comes up with a huge interception, begins to dribble towards the midfield before booting it up front to a sprinting Marius Buskar Larsen, catching Molde's keeper off his line, lobbing it over him. The most unlikely and yet biggest goal in Alta IF's history, as they hold strong after 120 plus minutes to lift their first major trophy in Norwegian football in the NM Cupen. They put an end to Molde FK's four-peat attempt, and at long last, Ole Fury has a win over his distant cousin in Ole Gunnar Solskjær. It's a magical cup run that will most likely never be reproduced. Along with the accolade and riches, Alta IF also have guaranteed themselves a chance at the third qualifying round of the Europa League. The schedule's only bound to get tougher with European qualifiers on the horizon, but for Ole Fury's mission to raise the club profile enough to get a new ground built, it's a necessary step forward. But with the budget that they're given for the upcoming year though, well, Ole Fury is wishing that the current chairman had been voted out when they had the chance. Against all odds, Ole Fury Solksjær and Alta IF were able to stun the entirety of Norwegian football by winning the NM Cupen against Molde FK and Ole Gunnar Solskjær via a 119th minute winner. That victory also guarantees them a spot in the second qualifying round of the UEFA Europa League. And management still won't authorize a new ground to be built due to a lack of fans, even as the team's stature increases. So it's gonna be another few seasons in Tromsø for the foreseeable future. Also, the budget is a little bit tighter than usual, so rather than trying to make a big splash in the transfer market, Ole Fury went the route of free transfers and most importantly,
Loans! Oh, loans! You gotta have loans!
Fredrik Schuvold, Kishan Ferdinand, and Tommy Brudal get grabbed in free transfers, or $9 in Tommy's case, but everyone else helping reinforce the team are all coming in on loans, such as Rami Alhaj, Iver Tomen Surdal Nielsen, Tristan Andrew, and Henrik Moen. But the biggest highlights of the window are being able to get Pierre Weber to once again come back on loan for another year, and thanks to Ole Fury watching one too many K-dramas in the off-season, he got the idea to scout South Korea, and with it, he found 18-year-old center back Sung Jae-wong, who looks like he's ready to start for the team. As is local loanee in Braj Quitilde, who the team also has an option to buy outright if they like him enough. All of these moves do lead to the team being okay with letting Albert Luton go back to France during the transfer window deadline for 600k. They also let one of the young prospects of the team in Elias Salvesen go on loan during what looks like to be a productive preseason. Well, Martin's missing everything until at least October, but life goes on and so does the Eliteserien. The expectations from the board of directors are to yet again avoid relegation within the Eliteserien and be competitive in the Norwegian Cup. So a season opening game winning effort against Lillestrøm that saw the new loanee in Jae Wong scoring and Wang Wei Peng doing so as well does inspire confidence within Alta's ranks. Bodø Glimt, who returned from a relegation stint last season with a vengeance, and usual pains in the ass SK Brann proceed to give Alta a hard time with a loss and a draw before they get back on track with a win over Vålerenga that was basically Nathaniel Nosu fending for his life and Marius Buskar Larsen capitalizing on one of the few chances that they got. But Strøm's God set brought them back to earth almost immediately afterward with a 3-0 thrashing. It's at that time that Alta gets their first round draw of the Norwegian Cup, and it's against Molde FK. A rematch of the grand final from last season should definitely draw some eyeballs, as it will be cousin versus cousin. So Ole Gunnar is no longer the manager? I didn't think they'd fire him for losing the cup.
A few minutes later.
So he didn't get fired, just left to coach another team. Okay, did Man United or someone in the Prem take him? Wait, he went to France instead?
We're gonna wee bomb on our way to glory.
Huh, well then. I guess Alta and Ole Fury don't have to worry about Ole Gunnar coming back for revenge. And the team seems to get that note because they managed to cruise to a 3-0 victory to get out of the first round. That lends them a match against Harstad IL of the 4th tier in the second round, in which the team does breeze through with relative ease in a 4-0 win.
Unit lost.
Within the league, however, the results are a bit more of a mixed bag, as while the team is able to get their points against the bottom half of the table in teams such as Sarpsborg 08, Kristiansund, and EK Start, they're having a much harder time against the more established league sides such as Odds BK, Molde, Sogndal, and Stabæk.
I don't believe in consistency.
Thankfully, the Norwegian Cup form seems to be something Ole Fury has mastered as they outlast SK Brunn in a close 3-2 affair, and then another 4th-tier team in Nardo FK is dealt with accordingly to send the team to the quarterfinals against another Eliteserien side in Haugesund. Speaking of which, Ole Fury just drew against them in the league because Marius Buskar Larsen decided to get himself sent off with a red card in the closing 15 minutes of the game.
Shame.
But to cap off June, the quarterfinals of the Norwegian Cup against Haugesund saw two important things come to light before the game itself. Nathaniel Nwosu being unpleased about being unable to move to Al Hilal because we kept denying any and all transfers, and the return of Elias Salverson from loan. All elements that led to a rough game where Alta's run almost came to an end, if not for Norwegian Cup legend Marius Buskar Larsen scoring the tying goal in the 84th minute to drag Alta to their first penalty kick shootout of the entire season. All penalty takers for the first 3 attempts for both sides get their shots to go in without any relative problems. But for Haugesund's Racine Coley, his shot hits the top post. That's all that Alta needs, with Buskar Larsen converting to give the advantage, Samuelsson converting to even the score, and Kashan Ferdinand scoring to help Alta pass their Eliteserien opponents and take them into the semifinals of the Norwegian Cup once again, where Alta would be set to face Stabæk, while EK Start would face Viking FK on the other semifinal. The very possibility of Alta repeating as Norwegian Cup champions wasn't out of the horizon anymore.
Flashback to the future!
NANI?
At least they beat Rosenborg and Ålesund to cap the first half of the season by being in the top half of the table?
You blew it!
Well, that's the Norwegian Cup out of the way then. Let's move on with the other things going on this season. Because in July, the transfer window for the summer opened and Ole Fury took the opportunity to make the loan for Rami Al-Haj into a permanent deal. And Fury also made a move to bring in defender Felix Ofoli on a free transfer after Ofoli's contract with Club Deportivo Leganés of Spain expired. He was also having to fend off advances from the likes of Napoli and Ajax for Wang Wei-peng, as the second qualifying round of the Europa League was knocking at their door. And FC Hradec Králové of the Czech's Fortuna Liga would be their opposition. The first game would be on the road, but from the get-go, Alta was dominating the whole affair, but were unable to find the back of the net in the first half. But that all changed at the 50th minute mark when 16-year-old Elias Salverson took a free kick from 26 yards and basically booted that right into the top right corner of the net, scoring his first ever goal with the club in style.
I said WWE stands for! Yeah.
It was a landslide victory from there, ending the first leg with a 4-0 victory and a 0-0 draw in the second leg that saw Alta advance to the third qualifying round, which would see them face FK Astana. Don't mind the fact that Marius got his yearly injury in between these games after Alta lost to Lillestrøm. Let's focus on the fact that their Europa League qualifying opponents in the third round are from Kazakhstan.
Very nice. High five.
Indeed. The first leg of the Europa matchup is a draw, and the second leg is a cagey 1-0 affair that saw Alta's Sigurðarson score on a penalty kick in the 63rd minute, and the Norwegian team hold on for dear life to get themselves into the playoff game against Belgium's Genk. Probably their toughest opponent by far, but a chance to go into the Europa and getting a nice payday out of it has Ole Fury motivated to get this done. Never mind all the draws in the Eliteserien and Europa outside of the second leg against Astana leading up to this match. I'm sure everything will be just fine for the boys, as they have to rescue a late draw against Genk in the first leg of the playoff round. Has the entirety of Alta been playing Drawsaurus all of August? It's the only way I can even explain these results. Thankfully, Ole Fury decides to move past this Drawsaurus phase as Alta beats Sarpsborg 08 in the Eliteserien before heading to Belgium for the second leg of the Europa League playoff against Genk. To the surprise of the entirety of Belgium, Alta's Icelandic beast in Sigurðarson comes through with a pair of goals in the first 30 minutes, and while Genk manages to get one back via a Nicolas Castro goal, it isn't enough as Alta goes full turtle tactics and managed to get an unprecedented result in order to qualify for the Europa League.
Success!
It may have cost them twisting Andrew's ankle for a month and a half, but look, sacrifices have to be made. Okay, I didn't mean that many sacrifices had to be made. That just makes a tough season even tougher, as another 8 matches are being added to the entirety of Alta's schedule, with 2 of those going into next season, technically. But at least the paydays are going to be nice if they can win 1 or 2 of these.
Tell them to bring me my money.
Beating Vålerenga to cap off the team's busiest August to date keeps them in the Eliteserien mid-table, and it gives them at least their 5 unbeaten game streak they've been doing at least once a season ever since Ole Fury took over as manager. On that note, September turns out to be an absolute horror show of a month, and it's not even spooky season yet. Key losses to Odds BK and Molde in the Eliteserien and the aforementioned Norwegian Cup semi-final loss to Stabæk happened here, along with a draw in their Europa League debut against Victoria Plzen. It apparently means another body needs to be sacrificed in order to reverse the course, which happens in the match against Sogndal when Rami Al-Hajj injures himself on the tackle he made. They do at least win that game. Then, they won their second Europa League matchup against Slovan Bratislava in dominant fashion. Another win follows suit against Kristiansund, and with it, there's only 5 games remaining where Alta somehow is 8th place, and with very slim odds to make a title win, as the point spread is closer than most between 1st and 8th. Motivated by the potential of European football on the table for next season, Alta proceeds to clean out the rest of October with wins against EK Start and Rosenborg, along with a draw against Haugesund in the Eliteserien to elevate them to 5th place in the standings. Then they beat Rangers in the Europa before getting swiftly demolished by Atalanta.
Acknowledge me.
But the focus is on placement in the Eliteserien, and a pair of victories against Stabæk and Ålesund allows them to remain 5th place in the league for their best Eliteserien finish to date, with 51 points. Only 4 points behind the league winners in SK Brann. You add that accomplishment to being in the playoff picture of the Europa League after beating Legia Warszawa and losing against Wolves. With 2 games to go in January for the Europa campaign, Alta can at least rest confident that their odds of at least making it to the playoff knockout round are rather solid. Overall, even without a trophy win, it makes for one of their most successful seasons to date. Add that to a 5th place finish that guarantees them Europa Conference League play next season, and Alta is riding high. So losing the semi-finals of the Norwegian Cup might have been a huge mistake. Good thing is a short off-season. Previously, Ole Fury Solksjær and Alta IF just finished the Eliteserien with their best finish yet in 5th place. But due to their Norwegian Cup semi-finals loss against Stabæk, they lost out on the chance to play European football for the 2027-28 stretch.
For f***'s sake!
However, they still had Europa League football from the 2026-27 season to play out. Look, it confused me too at first, but as you can see on the schedule, they have 2 more group game stages to go in the Europa, and after a short off-season, they played those games out against Braga and FK Partizan, drawing against the Portuguese side and then beating the Serbian side with ease to punch their ticket into the Europa League playoff knockout round.
Success!
With the previous Eliteserien season wrapping up, all of the loanees from last season left the club. Some of them had definitely done a good job, but it was clear that Fury's preferred men were Brecht Quitild and Son Jae-ung, as the manager proceeded to secure their services permanently, along with bringing in a Molde FK defensive midfielder Ole Christensen and Genoa midfielder Martin Palumbo on loan prior to the Europa League games of January. He was going to need him and that defense along with Nathaniel Nosu to be at their best this season. Hell, he was going to need this from the entire team. Why, you ask? Well, let's rewind a bit.
Flashback.
Shortly after getting back from vacation, Ole Fury yet again asked the club's chairperson to build them a new ground in Alta. Yet again, he got a less than stellar response. But unlike previous years, Ole Fury Solskjær had about enough of the lack of movement on something he felt was important to himself, his team, and the supporters. So he leaked the details of the meeting to the press and spoke out against the board. That led to the board requesting a meeting with him regarding what the board felt was public criticism of the club. A heated discussion occurred, and during the process, Ole Fury did not hesitate to let the board know exactly as to why they shouldn't fire him.
You need me more than I need you.
The chairperson agreed not to build a new stadium, but that Ole Fury is indispensable. For now. But if Ole Fury wanted the club to build him a new stadium so badly, he would need to prove it by guaranteeing the club a source of funds to do so. Thus, the chairperson gave him an ultimatum. If Ole Fury could win the Europa League or the Eliteserien in order to guarantee Champions League football, they would consider the possibility of beginning plans to build a new stadium. But if he fell short of the mark on both those trophies and delivered anything less than a top half finish in the league,
End of flashback.
So that's the reality. It's win a title or go home for Ole Fury Solksjær. But as mentioned before, Alta is now qualified for the playoff knockout round of the Europa League, and they're drawn against FK Sarajevo of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The first leg of that playoff round is a draw in Sarajevo, with the hosts rescuing a 1-1 result, and the second leg in Tromsø is a hard-fought affair that's looking like it'll go to extra time, until a Sarajevo defender gets sent off in the 89th minute for a reckless tackle. That sets up a free kick in which Sigurðarson scores with a header, and then he adds a second goal 3 minutes later for a 2-0 win and a 3-1 aggregate win to send Alta to the round of 16 of the Europa. Anderlecht is the opponent set in place to face Alta in the round of 16 as they proceed to take care of business at home with a solid 1-0 win via an Elias Salvesen goal, but the second leg sees Anderlecht fight back and take the game into extra time with a 3-2 result to tie the aggregate after 5 goals were scored by both sides in the first half. But in the 92nd minute, club icon Marius Puskar Larsson comes through with yet another clutch goal to tie the score 3-3, and Alta manages to hold on for extra time to win the aggregate and advance to the Europa League quarterfinals, where they'll face the evil pharmaceutical company Bayer Leverkusen. And those quarterfinal matches are sprinkled in between their first Eliteserien games and first round of the NM Cupen. And to prepare for the Eliteserien grind, Alta picks up winger Odd Erstad and defender Christopher Paulsen on loan, and spend about 40k to pick up Alberto Lopez out of Mexico to be a part of their future defending core. In the meantime, they parted ways with a goalie prospect in Jurgen Mork and Kishan Ferdinand at the transfer window deadline. Their first game of the Eliteserien would be against last year's NM Cupen winners in Stabæk, and Alta promptly proceeded to avenge that loss in Stabæk's own ground with a 2-0 victory. So in hilarious fashion, the NM Cupen draw promptly put them against each other in the first round.
Here we go again.
But the focus for Ole Fury and Alta promptly shifted to the Europa League quarterfinals as Leverkusen made their way above the Arctic Circle with a talented roster that included the likes of Florian Wirtz and Rasmus Højlund. Goals wouldn't be seen until late in the first leg, but a Wirtz brace did manage to carry the evil pharmaceutical company to a 3-1 win and a huge advantage going into the second leg in Germany. Alta did manage to shake off the loss by defeating Boru Glimt in the Eliteserien before making that trip to Germany, where the team managed to come up with a win, but coming just shy of the mark on aggregate goals, as a 2-1 win in the second leg was not enough to overturn the tide, and thus Alta was eliminated from the Europa League.
Game over!
While the rest of the month sees a mixture of results in the Europa aftermath with a draw to Sogndal, a loss to Vålerenga, and then a dominant win against Stabæk in the NM Cup in first round, in a way, these European games may have been the best preparation possible for the season to come.
Let's go!
They wrap up their busiest April ever with a win over Fana IL in the second round of the Norwegian Cup, and besides a blemish to SK Brann in early May, Alta managed to triumph in extra time against Haugesund in the third round of the Norwegian Cup, along with winning against Strømsgodset in Brenn, plus getting draws against Tromsø and IK Start. While losing a key player during a training session is unfortunate, Alta has some bigger concerns at hand as Wang Weipeng is starting to drop hints that he wants to play for a stronger squad and is considering leaving the team altogether. Questions for Ole Fury to explore over the upcoming months, as June starts with a draw against Haugesund to complete Fury's yearly 5 unbeaten game streak of the season, but he continues to build on it, which is impressive. Thankfully, Enoch Wimba got picked up on a free transfer earlier this year and ended up being as solid as a backup option, helping the team win close games in the 4th round and the quarterfinals of the Norwegian Cup against Bodø Glimt and against SK Brann in a 2-1 win to punch their ticket into the semifinals against EK Start before wrapping up June with a draw against Rosenborg, which has them within the top 5 of the league and only about 5 points behind league leaders Odds BK.
What the hell is this? I really don't understand it!
Look, while it's nice of Jurgen Klopp to let us walk with Elias for one more season, when you consider Alta's rise in the European ranks, along with Norway's own rise in the coefficient table, you'd think the board of directors would want to keep young talent here and help nurture them for at least their teenage years before selling them for big money. Surprisingly, Fury does not opt for throwing a tantrum, but focuses his attention on July instead, as they mow through Molde FK, hold on to a draw against Lillestrøm, and then wrap up the month with its solid wins against Sarpsborg 08, and their first ever win during the Ole Fury regime against Odds BK to push him into the top of the standings. That makes it 10 unbeaten games for Alta IF as the August transfer window opens, and fans immediately question the decision making as to why Elias Salvesen was sold in the first place.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this and give him a spanking.
So, offers are on the table for Nosu and Nene now. While nothing's been accepted yet, Ole Fury makes a move to bring in replacements in Alton Honestland on loan and a future transfer for next season in goalie Patrick Knudsen. But in the meantime, Alta keeps their streak ongoing with another win over Bodø Glimt and defeating Stabæk with a Sigurðarson brace, before a deal is then complete for Nathaniel Nosu to go to Saudi side Al Ahly for 3.5 million. While Nosu will be missed, this means that Enoch Mwimba will have a chance to prove himself as a starter, but so will one of Alta's youth recruitments from earlier this year in Andreas Lerkehau. Thankfully, Nene outright declines the transfer attempt and opts to stay, and his leadership is definitely a key factor in the team pulling through some tough late-game victories against Sogndal and Vålerenga through the latter half of August to keep themselves at the top of the Eliteserien table. With the funds received from the Salvesen and Nosu transfers, Ole Fury does acquire versatile young defender Anders Borseth from Molde FK for 3.3 million, then grab fullback Mark Strajnar on the transfer window deadline day from Slovenia's NK Domžale, and former Alta Academy trainee Hikmat Nazari on a free transfer. They also sell Fredrik Schuvold for 400k, and lastly, they grab Boris Radulovic on loan from FC Copenhagen for both striker depth and to measure if he's able to replace Salvesen down the line. Luckily, just after the window closed, Wang Weipeng opted to decline an offer made from Granada to stick it out for the remainder of the season. Alta goes undefeated through August and take that streak into September as they draw with SK Brann, then follow it with a win over Strømsgodset before facing the challenge of the Norwegian Cup semi-final against IK Start. IK Start manages to hold steady and have the better chances through the first 2 halves of the game as they take this one into extra time. Neither side can score, so you know what time it is. It's the annual tradition of Alta IF going to penalty kicks in the Norwegian Cup, and Andreas Lerkehau snags the first penalty kick attempt from IK Start that he sees. Weipeng, Kachi, Palumbo, Roden, Sigurðarson, and Bergum convert to make it 3-3, but Buskar Larsen cannot convert as his penalty kick is saved and leads to Alstavik with the chance to give IK Start the advantage. But Lerkehau comes through again with another huge save. It is in the feet of Felix Ofole to win it all, and he does it, kicking Alta IF right into the Norwegian Cup final for the second time in 3 years. With the final being set for Oslo against Strømsgodset, they follow suit with a win over Tromsø in the Eliteserien to wrap up September, and then begin October with wins over Bryn and Haugesund and a draw over IK Start that sets up a key game against the 26-time Elitserien winners Rosenborg, where a victory against them will seal the Elitserien title win for the first time in Alta IF's history.
I need that. We need that.
Zifweek does start things off for Rosenborg with a goal in the 25th minute, but in the second half, a penalty kick comes, and Wang Weipeng converts to tie it all up. 5 minutes later, it's none other than newcomer Mark Strajnar who moves down the wing into the box and scores a beauty of a goal to make it 2-1. And folks, in a 5-year span, Ole Fury Solksjær has brought Alta from being a semi-pro team in the 3rd tier to winning the Elitserien title. This league title win also guarantees that the team have qualified for the 2028 UEFA Champions League, putting the team in a position to really increase its finances if they can hang on for dear life during this time frame next year. But as ecstatic as things are with the title win, there is still one more piece of business left for the year, and that is the Norwegian Cup final, as Alta wraps up the league with 60 points and make the long flight to Oslo for the NM Cup and final against Strøm's Godset. Alta proceed to stomp him out with a dominant 3-0 win where Strajnar, Radulovic, and Weipeng score to seal the domestic double for Alta IF. Something that definitely should guarantee Ole Fury a longer stint with the club, because during his laser focus on the league and getting the results he got, there was another election for the chairperson position, and Tommy Fremstad lost the elections to one Jonas Jutnes, who had been waiting until the end of the season to officially announce that the board have announced plans to build a new stadium in Alta, and are beginning the process to search for suitable sites and possible investors. It is a great season for the team, seeing its first ever domestic double achieved, a place in the UEFA Champions League come midsummer of next year, and some good building blocks in place as the team's defense only let in 25 goals across all 3 competitions they played in for a total of 45 games, with 15 of those games in a row being clean sheets by the roster. Just an absolute defensive masterclass and the key reason for their Elitserien win. But that's the good news. The bad news is that Wang Weipeng wants to leave and he's really starting to get impatient about it. So last season, Ole Fury Solskjær's 5th year with Alta IF saw them conquer a domestic double in Norway by winning the Elitserien and the Norwegian Cup. That achievement automatically grants them a playoff round qualifying match for the UEFA Champions League. But unfortunately for Ole Fury, their youth prospect turned star player in Wang Weipeng has been dropping hints all of last season that he wants to leave the club. Something that became even more obvious when his agent refused to negotiate with Alta to secure a new deal.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is what a nervous breakdown looks like.
Deciding to try and profit from moving the youngster, Ole Fury puts out feelers across the various leagues, and while waiting on bids for his star player, he did ensure to secure the services of Ole Christensen and Christopher Paulsen from their loans with the club last season, along with officially welcoming goalie Patrick Knudsen. To prepare for the Elitserien and UEFA Champions League qualifying legs in the upcoming months, Ole Fury's off-season business would keep him busy, as he sold players such as Harald Jorgensen, Martin Schulstad, and Enoch Mwimba, who aren't capable to play at the necessary level moving forward, along with bringing in loanees Karim Lamont for the first half of the season as a backup goalie, and center back Eduardo Bedeschi from Sassuolo. Along with those loans, Alta also acquired free transfers Paul Fortuny, Ollie O'Neill, Romain Bertolin, Rodrigo Rodriguez, and Thorstein Hallam. It's during that time in which a deal for Wang Weipeng is finally accepted, as Weipeng is set to move to the Premier League for $7.25 million. It was Stoke City who ponied up for Weipeng after winning promotion into the Prem.
Yeah, but could he do it on a cold, rainy night in Stoke?
The Weipeng transfer funds gave Alta some options in the market, and so Ole Fury began to focus on making the necessary moves to replace his team's prize prospect. First, Alta would bring in building blocks for the future with Colombian winger Alan Mora and South Korean Choi Sung-yeon, But the two big replacements Ole Fury was looking for came from within the Eliteserien, as he'd paid 3.5 mil and 7 mil respectively for Vålerenga's two best players in attacking midfielder Glenn Arne Vite Vuyen, who we're just gonna call Glenn AK Vuyen moving forward to make it easier on all of us, and then Vålerenga's young striker Morten Sponos, who just happened to lead the entire Eliteserien last year in goals scored. Alta are considered to be the favorites for retaining the Eliteserien title, and they immediately will be put to the test by Viking, who have finally returned to the top level of Norwegian football after a nightmarish multiple years in the Obos-ligaen. Morten Sponas welcomes them back by scoring a goal in the first 20 seconds of the game.
Outstanding.
Well, this opens the floodgates as Henry Ofia and Tony Brudal proceed to score within minutes of each other, as Alta leads 2-1.
5 minutes later.
Depression!
Vålerenga was next on the list, and while the two former star players weren't on the field, Alta still managed to handle business with a 2-0 win. So losing a key defender leads to a draw against Tromsø, and as March is wrapping up, Ole Fury gets the news that Glenn AK will be out for another month or so due to a groin strain. This is right around the transfer deadline, where Hikmet Nazari is sold to Ålesund, and Alta ends up getting a contingency plan for the midfield in Harald Tangen, who they get on loan from Molde FK with an option to buy if things work out. The transfer window wraps up, and it's at this point where the season kicks into overdrive for Alta, as Eliteserien and Norwegian Cup fixtures will keep the team busy. A draw against Stabæk, followed by a close win against Sogndal, are a good start, but they get a tough draw in the first round of the Norwegian Cup against Bodø/Glimt, where it takes extra time and a returning Martin Sponos to score the winning goal in extra time to get him through to the second round, where they'd face Stabæk once again. Something began to click here, as the team would go through the rest of April only surrendering one goal for the whole month, as they won the remainder of their games, which included 3-0 wins against Haugesund and Escape Gun, a 2-1 win at the death against Lillestrøm, and a 2-0 routing of Stabæk in the second round of the Norwegian Cup. Third-tier Vard Haugesund would be Alta's next draw in the cup, and they'd be swiftly dealt with to start the month of May in a 3-0 win, thus drawing internal pain in their side odds VK as the fourth round matchup. But the unbeaten streak would continue through the remainder of May, routing Rosenborg with a 4-0 win, managing a clean sheet against Mjøndalen, finding their way to 3-2 victories against Strømsgodset in Bodø/Glimt to continue their dominant run over the Eliteserien, because so far, in all of their competitions, they're just simply a 1-1 draw against Odds BK to start June would serve as a background for things to come, as both teams would play one another days later in the Norwegian Cup in a game that saw Morten Sponas score within 19 seconds of the match, beating his 21-second record for the fastest goal in Alta IF history from the start of the year. Tomer Josefi scored 12 minutes later to spoil the fun and brought this fourth round matchup into extra time. But Brage Kvitiod and Marius Buskal Larsen's goals in extra time would be enough to help seal the deal, as Alta retained their unbeaten streak in all competitions and advanced to the quarterfinals of the Norwegian Cup. Spirits were high as a 3-1 win 2 weeks later over third-tier Fredrikstad and a draw against IK Start took the unbeaten streak into July, where wins against Molde FK and Viking FK kept them undefeated for a total of 21 games in the year so far, 16 of them within the Eliteserien.
However, I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
So go figure that said unbeaten streak basically went to die against Tromsø in a 2-1 loss, in a game where Alta was listed as the home team, in Tromsø Stadium. That was filled mainly by Tromsø fans. They really gotta start building that new stadium in Alta. But that streak does still have them in a great place in the Eliteserien, and they're gonna need that form because the August transfer window has opened and their UEFA Champions League draw is finally here. And Alta's gotta go through either Dinamo Zagreb or Sheriff Tiraspol in order to get into the Champions League's massive group stage. A tough 1-1 draw to Vålerenga after a missed penalty kick from Ole Christensen, and an embarrassing loss to Sogndal in their ground needs to get put in the rearview mirror almost immediately, because it would be Dinamo Zagreb that Alta would need to face in the 2-leg playoff draw to get into the Champions League. And that first game would be all the way in Croatia. For the first time in their history, Alta IF made the walk under the nightlights in Croatia into that iconic Champions League anthem, and proceeded to hang tough during the first half with a 0-0 result, before proceeding to ball out in the second half in a way that blindsided the Croatian champions, as Anders Burset put his name in the history books by scoring Alta's first ever goal in the competition, and 15 minutes later, Morten Sponas capitalized with a second goal. The first leg saw a 2-1 win that would force the Croatians to not only fly beyond the Arctic Circle, but also have to fight uphill to keep their chances alive. Alta's rotation of their lineup against Stabæk is still enough to get them a win and preserve the starting lineup for the return leg against Dinamo Zagreb in Tromsø. The second leg would go in a similar manner as the first, as team captain Noah Nene and Morten Sponas scored early on, and Zagreb could not make up the difference. The boys had done it. Ole Fury Solksjær and Alta IF are now headed to the UEFA Champions League group stages. This schedule is rough. At best, the team can maybe squeeze in on the playoff knockout round, but when you've got Manchester City, Juventus, Bayern Munich, and Napoli on the group stage schedule, you're just not gonna have a good time. But getting 14.6 million on the budget for qualifying for the group stages does alleviate that significantly. Anyways, back to the Eliteserien. Haugesund comes back from a 2-0 deficit against Alta to end the game in a draw, and as August gets wrapped up, Lillestrøm, Stabæk, and Odds BK are starting to make up ground in the title race. Speaking of Lillestrøm, they are on the schedule for September twice within 3 days for both Eliteserien and the Norwegian Cup semi-final, games that happen within 5 days of Alta's first Champions League matchup. The transfer window is mostly quiet, but foreign teams like FC Copenhagen and Schalke offer enough money for the services of Glenn Sigurd Brusgaard and Anders Burset to where Ole Fury is content with selling both and settling for only bringing in Sebastian Sebolinson on loan from Angers SCO in France due to his immense versatility and experience at various levels of European football. The month of September and its load of fixtures does start off in a challenging fashion as SK Brann manages a draw against Alta and their debut in the Champions League against Manchester City goes about as well as expected. Well, at least some things are consistent.
Several days later.
A win against Lillestrøm in the Eliteserien does keep them 9 points ahead of the pack, but the Norwegian Cup semi-final matchup between the clubs proves to be a much tougher affair. As both sides find a goal in the first half of the game, there's a missed penalty kick, and the game goes to extra time. Alta and Lillestrøm also score in extra time, but neither side can find the winning goal to end it there. And so, Alta keeps the tradition going for the 6th year straight with penalty kicks, and given their winning streak in those over the past few seasons, I like their chances.
A few minutes later.
Well, anything can happen in penalty kicks, and thus, Alta was eliminated from the Norwegian Cup. Rosenborg only added to that pain days later by managing a 1-0 win in the Eliteserien against a rotated side, getting themselves into second place and only 6 points away from the league leaders. But that rotation was for a reason, as Alta made their way to Austria for their second Champions League group stage game against RB Salzburg, and then proceeded to score 2 goals within the first 10 minutes of the game, getting their first ever Champions League win in history in the process. A game against Mjøndalen followed to wrap up September, in which Harald Tangen got a hat-trick out of nowhere to secure a solid 3-1 win for the team to keep them ahead in the standings.
God damn it!
October would see the title race headed to the wire in these final 5 Eliteserien games for the next 2 months. Alta would have to fend off both Rosenborg and Odds BK for the top spot, and losing their first game of that bunch against Strømsgodset after leading 1-0 in the first half wasn't an encouraging sign. but it also showed that Ole Fury's rotations did pay off, as his main starting 11 managed to fend off Red Star Belgrade with 2 goals in the second half and win 2-1 in the Champions League group stage game. That momentum was then carried into the remainder of the month, as Alta dominated Bodo Glimt at home with a 4-1 victory that featured Harald Tangen's second hat-trick of the season and a key 2-1 win against Odds BK at their own ground. Due to results going their way elsewhere, the victory against Odds BK guaranteed that Alta IF will retain the Eliteserien and have their playoff round qualifier spot for next season's Champions League as well. A lot of that work came on the back of an undefeated first half of the season, and for Ole Fury, this now allowed him to use the Eliteserien as a means to sharpen his players for the bigger games to come in the Champions League. They'd fly off to Italy next to face one of the elites of world football in Juventus in the Champions League, and through sheer will and a good amount of luck, they managed to come out of Allianz Stadium with a 1-1 draw that no one saw coming. Alta then wraps up the Eliteserien with a draw against Molde FK and a loss against IK Start, but the end-of-year fixtures were still to come between AEK Athens and Freiburg in the Champions League group stage, as Alta is off to Greece for the matchup against AEK Athens first. Harald Tangen proceeds to pull off his third hat-trick of the season, and Alan Mora adds a 4th goal to go with their 4-2 win. That win puts Alta at 10 points in the Champions League and right in the middle of the pack for a playoff knockout round spot, although that's not a guarantee as of yet because Freiburg has got next on the group stage matchups, and they're 2 points ahead of Alta in it. But due to their rock-solid defense finding its form and Glenn A.K. Vuyen scoring the only goal of the matchup, Alta comes out victorious against the German side, and with it, they secure a playoff spot in the Champions League.
Success!
But where exactly they will fall within the playoffs for the Champions League is yet to be seen, as they still have games in January against Bayern Munich and Napoli. While the 2028 season doesn't end like last year's domestic double season, the retention of the Eliteserien title and the unexpected progress within the Champions League are encouraging signs for Alta IF, as Ole Fury Solksjær is proving to be one of the greatest managers to come out of the country since, well, his distant cousin. Solid transfers, excellent player performances, all of it has gotten them this far. To add to the good news, plans are fully unveiled that Alta Stadium has been greenlit and will begin construction for about $5 million, as the club's coffers have more than enough to afford it. The ground is set to be ready for completion as of January 2030, so it only meant one more year in Tromsø before Alta IF could finally go home. Oh, right, I knew I was forgetting something. The Norwegian Cup final? Get this. Lillestrøm lost it on penalties to Kristiansund, who are an Obos-ligaen team, who also happen to get promoted this season to the Eliteserien. At least somebody else did a domestic double this year. While Alta missed out on a domestic double last season, their retention of the Eliteserien title has allowed them to continue making appearances within the UEFA Champions League. Speaking of which, the 2028-29 Champions League campaign was still underway with 2 more games to go in January, but with Alta being in a good place as they managed to secure a playoff spot within the first 6 games of the massive group stage. In order to prepare for the Champions League games as the Norwegian season wrapped up, Ole Fury didn't hesitate to pull the trigger on the option to purchase Harald Tangen from Molde FK. But while he's overjoyed at having a player in his prime, he's also preparing to say goodbye to a club icon. Since the start of last season, Marius Buskar Larsson's appearances as a starter were becoming more and more limited due to his own limits as a player, as well as better players being brought in to handle domestic and continental competitions. During the course of last season, he'd begun to attract suitors for his services, but its UAE side, Al Wasso, came forth with the best offer of the bunch.
Several days later,
Ole Fury accepted the 2.2 million fee for one of the few men who'd been with him since the start of the journey. His contributions to the club in clutch goals are the stuff of legends that will not be forgotten.
So long, partner. Right back at you, buddy.
But life goes on, and with it, Ole Fury had to get ready for the upcoming games after a short off-season. That meant extensions for some of their key players, along with bringing promising young players like Luis Guilherme, Gianpaolo, Guillermo Mendoza, and Ivan Molina, who looks ready to start games on their lineup. But as the team is getting back into practice for the upcoming Champions League games against Bayern Munich and Napoli, well, they knew Bayern and Napoli would be tough, but they just ran through Alta like a hot knife through butter. Thus, Alta has to settle for 16th place in the group stage table, and with it, a playoff knockout round matchup that would see them put against AZ Alkmaar of the Netherlands. The first leg saw a fairly even matchup that ended in a 1-1 draw in the Netherlands, and in the return leg in Norway, it was a low-key affair in which Ivan Molina made the biggest impact with the only goal of the matchup and thus got Alta through to the round of 16 where they would face Paris Saint-Germain.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's the end of that. On the bright side, Alta made some good money out of this run, and the Champions League was a training camp and a half for the team to be prepped for the Eliteserien season, as Alta were once again expected to win the league by the pundits. There was also the fact that Ole Fury was so upset about being pants down by the French that he brought Altin Åneslund back on a permanent deal to strengthen the midfield, found a young Greek prospect on a free transfer in Manos Soileris, then got Nicolo Battaglia on loan from Brescia to strengthen the wing positions, and finally got the team a half-decent backup keeper in Giadine White, even if he had to pay out of the wazoo to get him. But as the trade deadline wrapped up, he also said his goodbyes to Brage Guitild as he was sent off to Molde FK for 3.1 million.
No bread, no water, just meat. That's what's gonna happen tonight.
Tangents aside, Alta starts off in the Eliteserien and the NM Cup and campaigns this season by ripping and tearing through anything and everything that moves, with their only non-victory result being a 0-0 draw against Molde FK at the end of April. But it isn't just that Alta's winning, it's the fact that they're winning with Andreas Lerkehau becoming an immovable fortress and only allowing 3 goals to go through him during that entire stretch, while Ivan Molina, Morten Sponas, and returning loanee Choi Sung-yeon did the bulk of the goal scoring for the team. Those efforts on both sides of the ball have carried the team through the Eliteserien campaign and through relatively easy matchups in the Norwegian Cup against lower league teams in Sandnes Ulf, Jerv, and Raufoss Football. June saw a lot of the same kind of defensive dominance within the Eliteserien as Alta won all 3 league games that month and then handled their business accordingly against much tougher competition in the Norwegian Cup's latter rounds, surviving a cagey game against Sogndal in the round of 16, and then a quarterfinal round matchup against Vålerenga that saw Alta's other yearly tradition come to light, as a 1-1 draw brought them the penalty kicks, where Andreas Lerkehau yet again proved his current form wasn't some sort of fluke by saving the first 2 penalty kicks, and Alta handled the rest, punching their way into the semifinals where they would be pitted against Odds BK. But between the successful Champions League stint for their size and stature, along with the current dominance they were showcasing in the Norwegian League and Cup, that started to attract interest from teams outside of Norway for a lot of the young players within the Alta roster. While Ole Fury was more than happy with selling Milan Hoke to Alta IF for 2.2 million, he wasn't exactly keen on letting the likes of Spunas, Son Chae-woong, Choi Sung-yeon, and Andreas Lerkehau go anywhere. However, Morten Spunas eventually had a 13 million offer thrown that could rise to become 16 million, and after some convincing from Ole Fury to get a nice year-long loan back length clause in that transfer, well, Stoke City struck with another Norwegian prospect yet again.
Yeah, but could he do it on a cold, rainy night in Stoke?
Yes! Yes, he can! He's played in Norway since he was f***ing 15! God damn it! Sorry about that. Lost myself for a second there. Let's move on, shall we?
24 hours later.
July did start at the rough side with 2 draws in a row against IK Start and Odds BK, but bounce-back wins against Viking FK and Vålerenga ensured a 16 unbeaten game streak in the Eliteserien and quite a large gap in points within the league at this point, where Ole Fury was starting to eye the possibility of an unbeaten season, something that has only been done by Rosenborg in 2010. But with the end of July and beginning of August, the transfer window opened up again, and with it, a new signing arrived in town. A signing that Ole Fury had worked out as far back as January, but would take effect right after the Vålerenga game, as he brought in veteran center back Rob Holding into the fold.
What?
In this universe, he didn't leave Arsenal until 2024 and had stints with West Ham, Middlesbrough, AZ in the Netherlands, and was lingering around in Hull City before Alta opted to pick him up on a free transfer to just give the young kids in the defense a mentor figure, once they got him up to speed on his Norwegian. Anyways, time for the playoff path draw of this season's Champions League. Alta's getting the winner between FK Partizan and Shamrock Rovers for this roundabout, and after a draw against Ranheim and a win against Kristiansund in the Eliteserien, it turns out that it will be the Irish champions in Shamrock Rovers who will be facing Alta for the right to enter the Champions League group stage. Alright, I know how these things come in twos with how this entire saga has been going. Come on, give it to me. Who's the next one going on the injury reserve list? Cool, we can move on now. So, the Champions League playoff path starts with Alta going to Ireland for the first time around, and they proceed to beat Shamrock Rovers thoroughly in their own home with a dominant 3-0 win. While they get a much tougher game from Rovers when they come to Norway, it's not enough to overturn the aggregate, and for the second straight year, Alta are in the Champions League group stage. You know what? I'm confident in Alta to secure another playoff knockout round again. So with those Champions League game group stages put on the schedule, they wrap up the month with a win against Bodø Glimt to head into September still undefeated through the current Norwegian campaign, and Ole Fury feels comfortable enough with the team that he's built to not make any other moves in the transfer deadline window. The unbeaten streak nearly came to an end early in September, as Molde FK gave him a run for their money, but a returning Morten Sponnes managed to get a goal at the 93rd minute to rescue a point and keep them from their first loss. That game made it 20 unbeaten games in the Eliteserien for Alta, 27 unbeaten in total through all other competitions. Ole Fury proceeds to get his boys dialed back in on defense after the Molde game, as their next 3 games in a row are 1-1-0 against Sogndal, SK Brann, and Tromsø within the Eliteserien, and even their first Champions League game against Atalanta ends in the same result. The end of September leads into the Norwegian Cup semi-final against Odds BK, and after 3 goals in 3 minutes are scored early in the second half, Alta securely punched their ticket back to Oslo for the Norwegian Cup final, where they'll get a chance at revenge for last season's semi-final against Lillestrøm.
We want the gold, sucker! Hulk Hogan, we coming for you!
But the work continues, as Alta flew out to Turkey to face Fenerbahce. But even in a hostile environment, they managed to secure a 2-0 win. But in good news, a victory over Strømsgodset and results going accordingly across the league guarantee the retention of the Eliteserien for Alta. But even with the title secured, there was still something to play for, as the unbeaten streak within the Eliteserien was within reach. A draw against Lillestrøm put them 5 games away from that goal, but before they could go any further, Real Madrid made their way above the Arctic Circle for Alta to host them in the next Champions League game. Ivan Molina scored a counter-attack goal within the first 6 minutes, and it all kind of goes downhill from there, as Real Madrid scored 3 straight, and even a Luis Guilherme goal in stoppage time isn't enough to salvage things, as Los Blancos give Alta their first defeat in a while. It doesn't stop Alta from continuing their form in the Eliteserien as they beat Stabæk to wrap up October and start off November with a win over IK Start and then Freiburg in the Champions League to get back to 4
to 6 days later.
Giadine White tries his best, but in a cruel twist of fate, it's Rosenborg who finally hands Alta their first defeat of the season to maintain their status as the only team in Norway to have an unbeaten season. Odds BK and Viking FK follow suit in the last 2 games of the Eliteserien to hand Alta defeats due to fighting for their own Eliteserien lives, but at that point, Ole Fury was starting to rotate the lineups to keep the team fresh for their next Champions League bouts, and then, of course, the Norwegian Cup final. Basso was dealt with in the Champions League in dominant fashion, even if the scoreboard doesn't show it, and while they end up with a disappointing draw against Feyenoord, the points are still enough to have Alta secure their playoff spot for the second year running. They'd worry about Paris Saint-Germain and Napoli at another time because for now, it was finally a chance at revenge for last year. Lillestrøm had been solid throughout the year as they managed a 5th place finish, but a Norwegian Cup win would get them Europa League football over Europa Conference League football next year, while Alta was in this for their own pride and a chance at their second ever domestic double. Andreas Lerkehau would also insist in playing the final, even though he was still technically supposed to be recovering from his earlier injury in the season. The game would start horribly, as Lillestrøm would pounce on the fact that Lerkehau may have rushed his return by scoring 2 goals within 15 minutes. But after a thorough yelling in the locker room, Alta came back with more life in the second half, and Morten Sponnes proved exactly as to why he would be headed to the Premier League next summer by equalizing within the first 20 minutes of the second half. This would bring the Norwegian Cup final into extra time. Morten Sponnes would yet again come through in the clutch with a 3rd goal in the 102nd minute, and then Altin Åneslund would add a 4th goal in the 111th minute to wrap things up and guarantee Alta IF their second domestic double in 3 years. It's a massive achievement for the club and a high note to go into before the move into the new stadium next year. It's also worth noting that while Spunas or Sungyeon have dominated the headlines, it was Ivan Molina who had emerged as the main goal-scoring threat for the club throughout the season with 23 across all competitions, which got him voted as the fans' player of the season, young player of the season, and signing of the season. Not to mention the historic season by Andreas Lerkehau, who established the new Eliteserien shutout record with 16 of them, and he was one of the key reasons along with Alta's defense that led to Alta having the fewest goals conceded and most shutouts throughout the league. Ole Fury's work was being noticed in all corners of the world as well, as he was approached just before the off-season about interviewing for the Newcastle United job. But given how comfortable he's been in his native home and in helping Alta turn from a semi-professional club into a Norwegian powerhouse, he opted to decline. He had 2 more years left on his contract deal with Alta, and so he made a decision after declining the wins of the Premier League. Ole Fury Solksjær would take his team as far as they can go, and one very particular trophy was now his endgame. So after another season where Alta IF conquered the domestic double and refusing the advances of Newcastle United, Ole Fury Solskjær's focus for the final 2 years of his contract would be to continue his team's form as the absolute best in domestic competitions in Norway, and to take them as far as they could go in the continental stage with the UEFA Champions League. He wouldn't have much of an off-season yet again, as the team returned from pre-season just after the Christmas break in order to prepare for their final 2 Champions League group stage matchups against Napoli and the team that eliminated them last season in Paris Saint-Germain.
Yes, sir.
I mean, both of those matches ended up being draws, but considering both teams beat Alta last year in rather decisive manners, this was already an improvement in and of itself. That did lead Alta to fall off the top 8 though, and yet again, they would have to play in the knockout playoff round to continue their run in this competition. Much like last season, they would get another Dutch team, but this time, it would be AFC Ajax. So, while they'd be missing one of their key starters in midfield, Alta would head to Johan Cruyff Arena and manage to rescue a draw against the current leaders in the Eredivisie and ensure that the decisive game would take place in Norway. It was a return game in which Alta found their opportunities with Morten Spunnes scoring the first goal. In the second half, it's another young prospect from the Alta Academy in Johannes Bjorkens who scores with a header off a set piece to make it 2-0. To their credit, Ajax did not go gently into that good night as Andreas Lerkehau completely whiffs on a corner kick clearance and Nathan Ngomu gets one back at the 77th minute, before proceeding to score on yet another corner kick to tie up the aggregate, and that takes the game into extra time. For Alta, they thankfully aren't up against Musterman's Ajax team, at least not in this particular universe, and they also have Ivan Molina finally making a run into the box to score in the 96th minute. And Alta then manages to hold on to the result in order to advance to the round of 16, causing what some are considering to be a little bit of an upset result. They just had to have yet another injury in order to do so. But look, they're back in the round of 16, and let's just see who they're get. Ai meu Deus do céu e da terra.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Look, they might owe 10 billion to the Spanish government at this rate, but that only makes this matchup worse, because they're probably desperate for money, and winning in the Champions League at least gets you paid accordingly. This isn't going to be easy by any means. But to his credit, Ole Fury did not hesitate to take a more balanced approach to the first leg, and while Barcelona had the advantages on possession and shots, it was Alta that found the back of the net. They found the back of the net 3 times. So after stunning Barca in the first leg, Ole Fury and his men just had a pretty simple task. You know, going into Camp Nou in front of 90,000+ for the second leg of the Champions League and trying not to get their backs broken in the process.
1 week later,
Ansu Fati would nearly do said back-breaking by himself at the tail end of the second half by scoring 2 goals. But thankfully, Morten Spunnes ices the Catalonians' hopes and dreams with a goal in stoppage time to make it 4-2 on aggregate, and for the first time in their history, Alta IF moves to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. This is the point where the season would get a little tougher, as Ole Fury would have to balance the initial fixtures of the Eliteserien and the NM Cupen while trying to continue advancing further in the Champions League, as the quarterfinals would put him against Germany's Borussia Dortmund. We'll keep the focus on the Champions League for the time being, as the Germans do come to Norway for the first leg of the quarterfinal and manage to hold Alta to 0 shots on target in the process. But thanks to Andreas Lerkehau's efforts, the match ended in a 0-0 draw. The return leg would see Ole Fury shift from the 4-2-3-1 he'd been using in previous matchups to his patented 5-3-2 counterattack tactic, and that shift in tactics paid off dividends as a returning Alton Åneslund initiated a counterattack in the 18th minute along with Ivan Molina before opening up the scoring himself. Dortmund would continue to take their chances on goal, but they weren't finding the mark as easily as in the first leg. And eventually, the 73rd minute saw Dortmund get caught yet again on the counter, and Ivan Molina catching keeper Ilan Meslier off his line with a lob to make it 2-0. While Dortmund would end up getting a controversial penalty kick via VAR and Salvatore Esposito scored to make it 2-1, it was too little, too late. In typical Dortmund fashion, they bottle it yet again in a game that matters most, as Alta somehow, some way, pulls off yet another rabbit out of the hat to advance to the Champions League semi-final. It doesn't get any easier, as it's Napoli that is waiting for them on the other side of that semi-final. Alta does have the advantage of hosting the first leg, and to their credit, the combination of playing in their home soil and their young talent developing into capable players at this level allows them to go toe-to-toe against Napoli, and eventually Alton Åneslund finds the back of the net yet again in this competition in the 65th minute. They held steady and came out of the first leg with the 1-0 aggregate, although they now had the task to hold on to that result or build on it in Naples. This is the price to pay for that Dortmund win, isn't it?
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Missing one of the key cogs in their offense for the second leg of the semifinal isn't going to help matters. Napoli is desperate from the moment the whistle blows in the second leg, and eventually, their press wins out as the combined efforts of Rooney Bardghji, Giacomo Raspadori, and Matistel break through the Alta defense, and Napoli scores the tying goal of the aggregate. But immediately after the kickoff from that aggregate goal, Napoli's press fails to capitalize on a chance, and Alten Ånesland finds Morten Spones with a long-range pass, and the Premier League-bound player weaves his way through the Napoli defense to chip the ball over the keeper and score the tying goal for Alta IF. Fighting for their lives in every sense of the word, Napoli ups the pressure and their chances almost result in the second goal. But with their defending and a great amount of luck, Alta survives the last barrage, and they pull yet another stunning upset to punch their ticket to Greece in the Champions League final. And it would be Manchester United that's standing between them and ultimate glory. This Manchester United team still had Marcus Rashford captaining it, and Lisandro Martinez recklessly tackling people like the Argentinian pest he is, but their look was much different, as their manager was now Ruud van Nistelrooy, who'd been a former player for the club in the 2000s, and in this particular corner of the universe, they managed to get Florian Wirtz and Jude Bellingham on the same roster. Oh, right, yeah, Mason Mount's still here too, I guess.
Right, now let's score a goal!
But while Alta would be headed to Greece for that final at the beginning of June, I guess we can touch on the domestic campaign and everything that's been going on in between these games. Outside of an early season loss to Vålerenga just before their second leg against Dortmund, Alta's put on some pretty dominant performances in the Eliteserien. They have been top of the league with a game in hand. Their new stadium in Alta Park and Arena was finally opened in mid-May. Things were going well, and the same went for the Norwegian Cup, where they had dispatched of Kvikvalden, Geråsen, and Brumunddal in the first 3 rounds, and were set to face Sarpsborg 08 in the round of 16 a few weeks after the Champions League final. Thus, let's head back to the matter at hand, the UEFA Champions League final. It's obviously the biggest stage in which a club like Alta could ever step into, and they were going up against a team that was desperate to win its first piece of silverware since an Europa League title in 2024. The difference in the levels between both teams was shown from the get-go, as the Red Devils turned up the aggression and pressed like no other. They'd hold the advantage on possession and shots, although the defense was doing more than enough to either block them or ensure they're going off target, with Andreas Lerkehau making the saves when needed. But in the 80th minute, the dam finally broke, as Jan Thielman made his way into the box after a Tom Batig pass and scored to make it 1-0 Manchester United. Ole Fury would have to think fast here, and he shifts to a makeshift formation to push for the tying goal, which nearly bites him in the ass almost immediately on 2 separate occasions. However, a free kick in Manchester United's zone, a few smart passes, and Alten Ånesland makes another impact in a crucial game, as this pass finds Choi Sung-gyeon, who finds the back of the net to tie it up at the 85th minute mark. Alta is hanging on by a literal thread at this point, as Lerkehau has to make the biggest save of his life not even 2 minutes later. But it is enough to drag him into extra time, where Ole Fury's approach is basically to survive at this point, to maybe find another counter-attack opportunity if Manchester United slipped up. All the while, the Red Devils just decided to take any shot at goal they could find. But extra time did not yield a winner. And with that, Greece was set to see the third act of this theater of dreams take place, as Alta IF and Manchester United headed to penalty kicks. Marcus Rashford would take center stage by going first and scoring for Man United. Ivan Molina would then take the first shot for Alta, only for it to be saved by Jurjan Šeker.
What a save!
John Thielmann and Harald Tungen would score respectively for their teams. Florian Wirtz would follow suit to make it 3-1 Man United. Then, it was vice-captain Ole Christensen's turn. And he kicked it straight at the goalie. 20-year-old wonderkid Tom Batig was the next kicker, and while Andreas Lurkerau goes the right way, it's still not enough to save it. This particular piece of theater ends in bliss and championship glory for Manchester United. But for Alta IF, it's nothing short of a goddamned Greek tragedy. To come so close to the mark and fall short, that alone shakes Ole Fury Solksjær to his score. He'd be lauded for bringing the team to this point. That Alta score players could very well find their way back here again if they played like they did this year. But that's the thing about a competition like the Champions League. There's no guarantee that you can replicate the same level of success every year. For all he knew, this was Alta's one shot at it all.
You blew it! You had it all and you blew it!
The season was not over though. Because of the Norwegian schedule, their focus had to come back to the domestic competitions, and Ole Fury finally made a big splash move on the transfer market by grabbing 20-year-old fullback Elliot Pelletier from Anderlecht, veteran defender Marquinhos from Liverpool, and attacking midfielder Runar Norheim from AZ in the August transfer window. Those moves did allow Alta to pick up the pieces from the Champions League loss and proceed to make good on winning their 4th straight Eliteserien title by the end of the year with a 24-4-2 record. Something that they got to do in their brand new stadium in Alta for the first time since their arrival in the Eliteserien, after kicking the snot out of Molde FK 6-0 near the end of the season. Alta did so while yet again scoring the most goals across the Eliteserien while conceding the least goals.
Very nice. High five.
Since we last checked in, Alta also made their way through the Norwegian Cup into the final after dealing with Sarpsborg 08, Kristiansund, and Jerv. But their finals opponent in Vålerenga did not give him an easy time, as the two sides ended the first 90 minutes at 1-1, and Vålerenga managed to drag the Eliteserien champions to penalty kicks for the first time since that Champions League final loss. And once again, Ole Christensen would have a penalty kick saved by the keeper.
You're joking. Not another one?
It would be the only miss in that entire set of penalty kicks, as the efforts of the remainder of the team are not enough. And a second chance at a trophy slips through Ole Fury's fingers in a cup final. Vålerenga lifted the NM Cupen for the 5th time in their existence and punched their ticket into the UEFA Europa League. Now, in a glass half full kind of view, this is a season that saw Alta IF being just a few penalty kicks going their way to achieve a treble of the likes that has never been seen in Norwegian football. But Ole Fury Solskjær has, more often than not, been a glass half empty kind of person. I mean, have you seen his face? Exactly. He made a promise to push this team as far as it can go, and with one more year left on his deal,
I have to finish the story.
The Champions League campaign for the 2030-31 stretch had gone rather smoothly for Alta up to this point, as they qualified into the group stages without too much concern and had gone unbeaten in their first 6 games of that group stage, including a victory over Barcelona and a draw against AC Milan. Ole Fury would tackle the last 2 games of the Champions League group stages in January against the likes of RB Leipzig and Chelsea to put the team in a top 8 spot to get a direct bye into the round of 16. He would wage war against the Titans of Europe and find ways to frustrate them, getting revenge on Paris Saint-Germain from 2 seasons ago in the round of 16 in a manner that would allow Macwo to make a video about their legacy of failure for the 8th year running, and by taking out Borussia Dortmund for the 2nd year running from the competition.
You're gonna be joking me!
Ole Fury would return to that sacred ground of the Champions League final, and on the last year of his contract, he would not be denied. Wait, Bayern beat him 3-2 on aggregate, and both deciding goals in each leg were scored by Bayern in stoppage time? Ah, dang it.